Dear participants, online or offline, we are very grateful for all of your questions, so that the discussions here would be more meaningful, because obviously we have a lot of expertise here in this room and also online. But I'm really wondering, Marko, in your view, when does or where does integration start?
Oh, this is a nice question. In a way, it starts. It starts could start even before a person arrives to the destination country. But generally, I would say that this adaptation period is the requirement. So really, you can go through it, and then you can start to really create those ties and really start this further integration. But, yeah.
Okay. What is your thought on that, Nina?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and I think it's also very interesting to consider in relation to my research, because certainly a lot of processes that are very crucial to integration starts long before anyone even leaves their own country. So one thing that I can perhaps say to this is that the image that different countries have in the countries that are refugee producing, and of course it's important to say that I'm speaking in the context of irregularized migration, which is, as you mentioned earlier, only a small part of the migrants who are relevant to migration or to integration. But so my point is that these perceptions of other countries are extremely important. An example from my own country, Denmark, is the advertisements that the then Danish integration minister placed in Lebanese newspapers, amongst others, basically saying, don't come to Denmark, it's a horrible country to be in. And this was a big case because they actually lied. There was actually false information in these ads. But here's the thing, these types of initiatives still serves a role in terms of integration, because it might have deterred some people from coming, but the people who came to Denmark they came with this perception that that Denmark was a country that wasn't really interested in having them, and that plays a huge role for their ability, their interest in integrating. And also, particularly, I can see a big difference between Denmark and Sweden in this context, where Sweden, at least for a while, was much more welcoming in the 2015 summer of integration, or what you would like to call it. Whereas Denmark was quite restrictive and had a quite right-leaning government at the time. So that has, and I can see that also from the people that I speak to, that people in Sweden, of course this is a very small sample, but people in Sweden have generally done better because they've been able to plan their lives. They've been able to have a security in both in feeling welcome, but also, and this relates to it, of course, in the policies that allows them to plan, because they have they have more securities in the visa. They have longer visas or longer asylum periods, which is a very, very different point of departure for integration.
Okay, thank you. So Marko, you were mentioning that companies or the employers as possible anchors or windows for creating contacts. How would you see this issue now then?
Yeah, especially in the knowledge industry, or these skilled workers who are coming, it is part of the company policies generally. And also in Estonia, we can see that that even like this sense of community in certain areas, like for example in Ülemiste, where where there are many companies that hire and invite foreign workers, even like the city environment and the development there emphasizes the importance of welcoming community side there, and it is part of their argument or their value for companies also, that this is the space that also, like more generally, not even like only the company itself, but more broadly welcomes this diversity and this type of workers, and you know, they feel themselves there comfortable, and it's kind of their space. And we had another applied research project related to this this district, and there as well, like the HR specialists said that it has become kind of extra value, and also they themselves as well turn attention to these informal relations and communication and all that. So definitely, especially when it comes to those skilled workforce or labor, it has potential, but then again, it's only one group, and in Estonian context, when we look at for example, spouses or those people who do not have also like work-related contacts, they are in the worst position when it comes to social contacts and finding communities. So yes, I think workplace is definitely very important there.
Okay. I just see a question from the audience that workers in high-tech companies change countries and jobs very often. Should we expect these high-skilled migrants take an effort to try to integrate? So from the structural point of view, yes, we have things in place, but now if we move to the migrant side, then do we see that in these kind of international organization or company setting, they readiness, willingness, desire to integrate is actually there, or they, at least in case of Estonia, for instance, they see it as a jumping board to go to some other place?
Yes, I think this is very much there, like this dimension of switching jobs and traveling, but I think this is the group that has like kind of special profile anyway, and this is something that probably is not like that. Their willingness and also the motivation to create those contacts anyway. It's not that high, but some kind of positioning yourself and knowing where you are and certain relations with the destination where you live, it's still there. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Nina, what is your thinking on integration outlook for irregular migrants or then refugees? Do you see this to be very similar to those who come for, let's say, working or studying or family reasons?
Yeah, I think that's very much depending on their visa situation. First of all, I would say that the people I've spoken with have been extremely resourceful people who have made journeys that are unimaginable to most of us and have, survived things that most of us can't even imagine. So coming with that is, of course, it's also people who are in many of them are in many ways traumatized by what they've been through, not just on the journey, but also before. But there are also people who come with extreme resources. But what I can say is that people who have a security, first of all, in terms of family reunification, anyone I've spoken with who haven't been family reunified, who have still had their family in war zones or similar, have not been able to in any way engage with integration. A Syrian man told me, how can I, study the language? How can I practice verbs when my children are in a war zone? So that's one thing, that the family reunification is an important necessity to integration. The other thing is that the people who have very short asylum or short visas, which according to new Danish asylum law, many people in Denmark, including Syrians, have temporary asylum, which lasts a year, sometimes 3 years, but which also prevents them from seeking family reunification. People on these short-term asylum visas are not as capable of integrating because they're not able to have a sense of security that they can actually plan a future. And without that, it's very difficult to in any way engage in integration.
Okay, thank you. Nina's presentation was touching a lot on trust. What do you think, Marco? How can the structure that you were presenting in a way help building that trust, especially if you talk about very diverse migration pathways?
Yeah, I think these examples that Nina gave, like they were really like empathic and giving the quite very good sense, like about the issues that those people have, and obviously building trust. It's already like the term. It's too instrumental, and you cannot really do it that way. I think it requires quite a lot of time, and obviously it's also very individual, depending on people and people's other characteristics and the situation where he or she finds herself in. But I don't know. I do not have really this kind of recipe. I think the sense of safety and really creating the connections and relations, this is something where it can start to build. But generally, I think when I think about the interviews that in our project we have conducted, even those people who have like quite negative or very negative experiences with immigration process or in their home country, it doesn't necessarily, like, at least this is something that they express in the interview, but it doesn't necessarily affect that much how they say that they see local institutions here. So they even like create those comparisons that, you know, here it's totally different, and this is something that we could also see that it's not necessarily like that. You know, that the lack of trust is coming here and affecting these relations as well.
Nina, I don't know if your research went any further, but did the refugees that you were interviewing, how did they reflect on sense of belonging in Denmark?
That's an interesting question, which I'm afraid I don't have much to say about, as the focus of our research was very much on the journey. But what I could see from people's situations was that some people were very sort of engaged in society, working and volunteering, and in a sense, at least, not necessarily expressing a sense of belonging, but at least articulating it through their practices. And again, those were mostly the people who had a more secure situation. One couple, actually a Syrian couple, was speaking Swedish to their child, which surprised me a bit. But I guess that's a way of enacting belonging, teaching your child the language of the host country.
Okay, thank you. I was asking this because Marko was reflecting on sense of belonging in his presentation. Since the panel discussion was labeled Adaptation of Newcomers and Building Trust, what would you say, how can we build the trust? Be it the trust among the migrants or being the trust among the receiving society? We can start from you.
Yeah, obviously the receiving society, or when we talk about Estonian context and the perception of ethnically different people or newcomers, it is definitely a barrier somehow, and this is something that definitely hinders those connections and also the possibility of being accepted in communities and really feeling yourself being welcomed. And I think this is something that definitely needs attention. From the interviews, again, I would say that actually the perception of newcomers who had been in Estonia for some time, actually they didn't express that they have met that much hostility or those really negative encounters. They had some, but they were kind of isolated. At least this is how they expressed in the interviews, obviously, and I think basically all of them had still some negative experiences with some encounters with locals who weren't that welcoming, and I think this is something that obviously reflects the more general communicative climate and if in public debate and in public communication there are like quite hostile meanings circulating, then it's not surprising that obviously these affect those perceptions and also the trust issues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Nina would have the last chance to come up with something new and interesting.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think it's very much a matter of the meeting. So in a sense, trust starts there. But one thing I can say is certainly significant is the ability to actually take time to build trust, which is exactly what's not available on the journeys. And many of the people I've spoken with, it's been sort of I guess different, not necessarily different experiences, but different sentiments, where some were extremely grateful, all were very grateful for being in a country where they were safe. Some were quite frustrated with the discourse, with the tone of the public debates, but many were also extremely grateful for. I spoke to one man whose son was extremely traumatized from the war as a very small boy. And in the kindergarten, they had told the dad that he should go see a doctor and that he had a right to, get the help he needed for the boy. And he was extremely grateful that the society offered him this And that's, of course, an important part of sort of societal trust building, to be able to trust in the society, which can be then complicated by insecurities about your ability to stay in that country. Yeah, I think that's what I'd have to say about that question.
All right, thank you. From Slido, I see that we have no more questions, and thanks or due, whichever way we want to see it, I would wrap up this panel. I thank you all for participating, for your interesting point of views, and what I would conclude here is that trust, whichever way we see it and define, obviously is very critical when we talk about adaptation of newcomers. And I think what is important here is that we also have the mutual adjustment, as mentioned by Sarah. We might have the structure in place that works for the adaptation, integration, and then we have the migrants on the other hand. So how we all come together, I guess that requires certain mutual adjustment. Thank you.